They said I was foolish for marrying a blind beggar I found on the streets of Lagos. My family disowned me. My friends called me crazy. But none of them knew what I saw in him that day, sitting under the scorching sun at Ojuelegba Junction, his face turned toward the sound of passing cars. None of them could have predicted that this broken man would become the key to uncovering the darkest secret my wealthy family had buried for 20 years. Before we dive into this incredible story, please hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next, trust me. My name is Adaeze Okonkwo, and I was born with a silver spoon so big it could have fed an entire village. My father owned half of Victoria Island, my mother wore jewelry worth millions, and I was their precious only daughter, raised in a mansion with 12 bedrooms and staff who bowed when I walked past. I had everything money could buy, except one thing: peace. There was something wrong in our house, something that made my mother cry silently at night when she thought no one was listening, something that made my father drink himself unconscious in his study every Friday evening. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to that Tuesday morning when everything changed. I was driving through Ojuelegba, stuck in the usual Lagos traffic, when I saw him. A man, probably in his early 30s, sitting on a worn mat with a small cup in front of him. But it wasn't his torn clothes or his blindness that made me stop. It was his hands. Even from my air-conditioned car, I could see them, trembling as they reached out to passers-by. But it was the way he held them, with a strange dignity, fingers long and refined, like someone who once knew a different life. Something pulled at me. Call it intuition, call it madness, but I parked my car, ignoring my driver's protests, and walked up to him. "Good afternoon," I said. He turned his head toward my voice, and I saw his eyes for the first time. They were glazed over with blindness, but beneath that, there was something else. Intelligence, pain, and something that looked like recognition, though we'd never met. "Good afternoon, madam," he replied, his voice smooth and educated, completely at odds with his appearance. "May God bless you." I knelt down, not caring about my expensive dress touching the dusty ground. "What's your name?" He hesitated, as if the question confused him.
Chike.
"My name is Chike. How long have you been here, Chike?"
3 years, madam.
3 long years. Something about the way he said it, with such profound sadness, broke something in me. I made a decision that would change both our lives forever. "Would you like to come home with me?" The silence that followed was deafening. Even the noise of Lagos seemed to fade away. He tilted his head, and for a moment, I saw fear cross his face. "Madam, I don't understand. Why would you?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I know you don't belong here. Let me help you." That was how Chike came into my life. My driver nearly quit on the spot. My mother almost fainted when I brought him home. My father stormed out of the house, shouting about how I'd lost my mind. But I gave Chike the guest house, bought him new clothes, and arranged for proper meals. I didn't know what I was doing or why, but something told me this was important. The first week was awkward. Chike barely spoke, eating his meals in silence, staying in his room most of the day. But I noticed things. The way he moved through spaces as if he could see them. The way he sometimes whispered numbers under his breath. The way he flinched whenever he heard my father's voice from the main house. It was on the 8th day that everything began to unravel. I was bringing Chike his lunch when I heard him on the phone. I shouldn't have listened, but his voice was different, urgent and afraid. "I told you, I can't remember anything clearly. The accident took more than my sight. But I know that house. I know that voice. Victor Okonkwo.
I'm sure of it now."
My blood ran cold. He was talking about my father. I pushed open the door, and Chike's head snapped toward me. "How long have you been standing there?" he asked quietly. "Long enough. You know my father? Is that why you agreed to come here?" Chike stood up slowly, his hands shaking again, but this time not from weakness. From rage. "I didn't know. Not at first. But when your driver said your name in the car, when I heard your father's voice that first day, something in my damaged memory stirred. And now, after a week of hearing him around this compound, I'm certain. Your father is the man who destroyed my life." I should have thrown him out. I should have defended my family. But instead, I sat down and said, "Tell me everything." What Chike told me that afternoon would shatter the perfect image I had of my family forever. 3 years ago, Chike wasn't a beggar. He was an accountant at one of the biggest oil companies in Lagos, married with a beautiful wife and a 2-year-old daughter. But he discovered something he wasn't supposed to see. Documents showing that my father's company was involved in a massive fraud scheme, siphoning billions from government contracts meant for developing the Niger Delta. Chike had tried to do the right thing. He'd compiled evidence, ready to take it to the authorities. He never got the chance. On his way to meet a journalist, his car was run off 3rd Mainland Bridge. He remembered the moment before impact, headlights deliberately ramming into him, remembered the cold water of the lagoon swallowing his car, remembered fighting to break the window, to breathe. He survived, barely, pulled out by fishermen. But the accident had stolen his sight and fractured his memories into scattered pieces he couldn't quite put together. When he finally made it to the hospital weeks later, treated as an indigent patient with no identification, he learned the worst part. His house had burned down the same night as his accident. His wife and daughter were inside. They didn't make it out. They told the police it was an electrical fault, Chike said, his blind eyes streaming with tears. But I knew. Someone had made sure to erase me and everyone who mattered to me. But my memory was too damaged to remember who or why. All I had were fragments, nightmares of headlights, and a voice saying, "Victor said to make it clean." I've spent 3 years on the streets, broken and forgotten. Those 2 words haunting me every single day.
Victor.
Victor who? My hands were shaking so badly, I had to clasp them together. You think my father murdered your family? You think he tried to kill you? I don't think, Adaeze.
I know.
And now that I'm here, in this house, other memories are coming back. The smell of his cologne. The way he clears his throat. These are things my broken mind remembers even if it can't remember everything else. I wanted to call him crazy. I wanted to throw him out and pretend this conversation never happened. But deep down, in the place where I'd always known something was rotten in my family, his story made terrible sense. The guilty drinks my father took every Friday. The way my mother whispered prayers for forgiveness in her sleep. The sudden wealth that had doubled 3 years ago, right around the time Chike's life had been destroyed. What do you want me to do? I asked quietly. Help me prove it. Help me find the evidence I couldn't deliver 3 years ago. It's still out there somewhere. And help me get justice for my wife, for my daughter, for the life I should have had. I looked at this broken man, this blind beggar I'd brought into my home out of what I thought was pity. But maybe it wasn't pity at all. Maybe it was fate. Okay, I said. But if we're going to do this, we have to be smart. My father is a powerful man with powerful friends. If he even suspects what we're doing, then we'll end up like my family, Chike finished. I know. Believe me, I know. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the man in my guest house, about his dead wife and child, about whether my comfortable life had been built on their graves. Around 2 a.m., I made a decision. I crept into my father's study. I'd been in that study 1,000 times, but never really looked. Now, I searched with purpose. It took me 2 hours, but I found it. A locked drawer in his filing cabinet. I'd seen my father open it once, using a key he kept in his wallet. I knew where he kept his spare wallet. My hands trembled as I opened the drawer. Inside were documents, lots of them. Bank statements showing transfers to offshore accounts. Emails discussing the accountant problem and permanent solutions. And photographs. Security camera footage printed out, showing a man who could have been Chike standing outside a newspaper office, envelope in hand. The date stamp showed 3 years ago, the day before his accident. There was more. A burner phone with a single contact saved, cleaner. And text messages that made my stomach turn. The accountant and his family. Tonight. Make it look like accidents. Victor will pay double for clean work. I was reading the text when I heard the voice behind me. I always knew you were too curious for your own good. I spun around to find my father standing in the doorway, his face hard and cold in a way I'd never seen before. Daddy, I can explain. Explain what? That you've been harboring that blind rat in my compound? That you've been listening to his lies? Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Fear shot through me. How did you? I have cameras everywhere, Adaeze. I saw you talking to him this afternoon. I saw the way you looked at him, like you believed his poison. I knew then that I'd made a mistake letting you keep him here. Where is he? I demanded, suddenly terrified. What have you done to Chike? My father smiled, and it was the cruelest thing I'd ever seen. The same thing I should have finished 3 years ago. Did you know he was so close? He had everything. Names, dates, account numbers. He would have destroyed not just me, but an entire network of people who make this country run. We couldn't let that happen. So, you killed his family? You blinded him and left him for dead. I did what was necessary. And I slept well afterward because I know how the world really works. People like him, with their morals and their evidence, they're dangerous. They upset the order of things. I backed away from him, clutching the documents. You're a monster. I'm a pragmatist. And you're about to learn a very hard lesson about family loyalty. He pulled out his phone, and I heard him speaking quietly. Yes, she found the documents. Bring the car around to the back. We'll take care of both of them tonight. Make it look like they ran away together and had an accident on the expressway. Star-crossed lovers, tragic story. He was going to kill me. My own father was going to kill me. I did the only thing I could think of. I screamed. I screamed as loud as I could. Mother! Mother, help! My father lunged for me, but I was faster. I ran, documents clutched to my chest, running through the house, screaming for my mother. I heard heavy footsteps behind me, more than just my father. His men were already in the house. I burst into my mother's room to find her sitting on her bed, tears streaming down her face. Mama, we have to go. He's going to kill me. He's going to kill Chike. But my mother didn't move. She just looked at me with infinite sadness. I know my daughter. I've always known what your father was. I've lived with this guilt for 20 years, watching him destroy anyone who threatened his empire. Then help me. We can go to the police. With what? Those documents you're holding? Your father's friends are the police, the judges, the politicians. There's nowhere to run in this country if Victor Okonkwo wants you dead. The door burst open. My father stood there with 2 large men, the kind who do terrible things for money. It's over, Adaeze. Give me the documents. But I'd already made my decision. I ran to the window, opened it, and threw the documents out into the night, scattering them across the compound. Then I jumped. I landed hard on the garden below, pain shooting through my ankle, but I didn't stop. I ran toward the guest house, screaming Chike's name. I could hear my father's men behind me, their footsteps getting closer. I burst through the guest house door.
Chike.
We have to run. They're coming. But the room was empty. No, not empty.
Destroyed.
Furniture overturned, blood on the floor. They'd already been here. I felt hands grab me from behind, pulling me back. I fought like a wild animal, scratching and biting, but there were too many of them. They dragged me toward a car, its engine already running. This was it. This was how I died. 26 years old, killed by my own father for trying to do the right thing. But then, lights. Bright, flashing blue and red lights flooding the compound. Police cars, many of them, crashing through our front gate. Officers poured out, guns drawn, surrounding us. Release her. Victor Okonkwo, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, corruption, and fraud. I was dropped to the ground as my father's men scattered, trying to run but finding themselves cut off at every turn. I looked up to see a police commissioner walking toward us, and behind him, supported by 2 officers, was Chike. You, my father shouted, pointing at Chike with shaking hands. You're supposed to be dead. Chike's blind eyes turned toward my father's voice. You didn't finish the job 3 years ago, Victor. And you made an even bigger mistake tonight. The commissioner stepped forward. We've been investigating Victor Okonkwo for 2 years, but we could never get enough evidence. Until tonight, when this brave man called us and told us everything was about to happen. We have recordings of your confession to your daughter. We have the documents she threw from the window. And we have a witness who survived your attempt to silence the truth. I stared at Chaik in confusion. But how? When did you? Chaik held up a phone. When you left this afternoon after our talk, you mentioned you'd have to search your father's study. I knew that was dangerous. So I called a number I'd kept for 3 years, a detective who'd believed my story when no one else did. I told him to be ready, that tonight might be the night we finally got Victor Okonkwo. When I heard the commotion, I made the call. Your father's men came for me, but the police arrived just in time. As they handcuffed my father, he looked at me with pure hatred. You've destroyed your own family, Adaeze. Everything we had. Everything I built. Everything you built on graves. I spat back. I'd rather have nothing than have this. They took him away, along with my mother, who was arrested as an accessory. The documents I'd scattered were collected as evidence. The mansion, the cars, the money, all of it was frozen, pending investigation. And I stood there in the ruins of my old life, with a blind beggar who turned out to be the most honest man I'd ever met. I'm sorry, Chaik said quietly. I know he was your father. He stopped being my father the moment he chose money over humanity, I replied. You lost everything because of him. Your wife, your daughter, your sight, 3 years of your life.
Yes.
And I can never get them back. But maybe their deaths won't be meaningless if this stops him from destroying other families. In the weeks that followed, the case became national news. My father's corruption network was exposed, involving dozens of government officials and business people. The trial was long and brutal, but the evidence was overwhelming. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison. My mother got 15 for her complicity. All our assets were seized. I moved into a small apartment in Folklore, got a job as a teacher, lived simply. Chaik moved in next door, receiving compensation from the government and starting the slow process of rebuilding his life. We became friends, real friends. I helped him navigate his world without sight. He helped me navigate my guilt and pain over what my family had done. And slowly, something else grew between us. It was 6 months after the arrest when I finally said it. We were sitting on my small balcony, sharing cheap pepper soup and talking about nothing important. Chaik, I need to tell you something. I'm listening. That day I saw you at Ojuelegba, I told myself I was acting out of pity. But I think even then, some part of me recognized you. Not your face, but your soul. I think some part of me knew that you were going to change everything. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and I took his hand. Adaeze, I hated you at first. You were his daughter, the child of the man who murdered my family. But you're nothing like him. You're brave and honest, and you are willing to lose everything for the truth. That's more than most people with sight ever manage to see. Where do we go from here? I asked. I don't know. I'm a blind man with trauma and grief. You're a woman rebuilding her life from scratch. Neither of us is ready for anything complicated. Then let's keep it simple. Let's just be here, together, taking it one day at a time. He smiled, and it was the first real smile I'd seen from him. I'd like that. A year later, we got married. Not in a fancy church with hundreds of guests like I'd once imagined. Just a small ceremony in a registry, with a handful of friends and the detective who'd helped bring my father down. I wore a simple white dress that cost less than the shoes I used to buy. Chaik wore a suit from a thrift store. And it was the most beautiful day of my life. People still call me crazy for marrying a blind beggar. They say I did it out of guilt, that I'm trying to atone for my father's sins. They don't understand, and I don't need them to. I married Chaik because he showed me what real strength looks like. Because he chose justice over revenge. Because despite everything he'd lost, he chose to rebuild rather than destroy. Because his blindness helped me see clearly for the first time in my life. Sometimes, late at night, we talk about his first wife and daughter. I never try to replace them. How could I? But I hope, wherever they are, they know that their husband and father got justice. That their deaths meant something. that the man who killed them can't hurt anyone else. Chaik still can't see. Modern medicine has given him no hope of recovery. But he tells me he doesn't need his eyes anymore. He has something better. He has truth, justice, and love that isn't built on lies. As for me, I traded a mansion for a small apartment, luxury cars for public buses, designer clothes for market finds. And I've never been happier. Because I learned the most important lesson of my life. Everything you own that's built on someone else's pain will eventually poison you. True wealth isn't measured in bank accounts. It's measured in how you can look at yourself in the mirror and not flinch away from who you've become. My father will die in prison. My mother might get out when she's old. Our family name is forever stained with shame. But I sleep peacefully every night, next to a man I once thought I was saving out of pity, not knowing that he was actually the one who would save me. They said I was foolish for marrying a blind beggar. Maybe I was. But it was the smartest foolish thing I've ever done. And that's my story. If it touched you in any way, if it made you think about what really matters in life, please hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the people we think need saving are actually the ones who end up saving us. Thank you for listening.